Hello and welcome inside the That Movie Is Ours Now podcast, episode 18. My name is David Sugarman. If it's your first time on my page, it's genuinely really nice to meet you. Thanks so much for stopping by. And if you're coming back, it's really good to see you again. Like, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff, if you at least like what you hear, because it helps. Hopefully other people find something they like to watch and hear. Do you want to know how to break a Guinness World Record? We're going to tell you how today, because we're speaking to a Guinness World Record holder, Zachariah Swope, who holds the Guinness World Record for the most movies seen in a theater in a single year. That number is 777 movies seen in theaters in a single year. I imagine you have a lot of questions. Why did you do this? What movies did you see the most? What were the best? What were the worst that you then had to watch on repeat? Lots of questions. How do you even verify this process? That was another question I know that people were wondering. And again, Zachariah was such an amazing guest. He goes into great detail about all of this and about why he did it beyond just, of course, a passion and love for movies and the theater going experience. There's a much deeper reason behind this, and it ties into raising awareness for mental health. We'll get into that in our conversation, but I do want to let you know the place that we will be talking about specifically is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I'm going to leave their link to their website below in the description. It is afsp.org. That is afsp.org. If you are somebody who is struggling with any kind of depression or suicidal thoughts, maybe you know somebody close to you who is struggling, maybe you just want to help out in some way, this is a really good place to research, to donate, and it might have some resources that could help you. Zachariah did this for an amazing cause, and we'll talk more about that during the episode as well. So I don't want to waste any more time. This conversation was such a blast. Zachariah was, truth be told, one of my favorite guests that I've had on. He's such an amazing guy. And when's the next time I'm going to speak to a Guinness World Record holder? At least knowingly, right? So this is pretty cool. So without further ado, let's get to it. This is episode 18 of the That Movie Is Ours Now podcast with the Guinness World Record holder for the most movies seen in theaters in a single year, Zachariah Swope. And here he is, the Guinness World Record holder for the most movies seen in theaters in a single year, Zachariah Swope. Thanks for coming on to That Movie Is Ours Now podcast, Zachariah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so there's so many questions I have about this record. I think this is so amazing. I think all the movie lovers will find this amazing too. Let's start at the beginning. How does one, even the most obsessive movie lover, how did you wake up one day and said, you know what? Damn it, I'm gonna go break a record. I'm gonna go see almost 800 movies in a year. How did that even begin in your mind before you started doing it?
Well, it was a very spontaneous decision. There was a story that came out that a guy watched Spider-Man No Way Home 292 times. And I was like, I wonder if there's another record I can break. So I looked into it and I was like, well, I go to the movies a lot anyways, so I can try to break the previous record, 700, which was 715. So I had to put in an application. So I submitted an application, which was a 12-week waiting period. So it gave me some time to think about it while I waited for a response.
I was gonna say, let's so talk me through that process of, so you're, the process of reaching out to Guinness, and how did that process work in terms of, we even got a question from TikTok, James Welsh. How do they verify, that you can prove you bought a ticket? Maybe you bought a ticket and didn't see the movie. How did that process work of actually confirming that you saw all of these movies?
So it's very extensive. Well, when I first started out, you have to reach out to Guinness and fill out an application on their website. And that could take 12 to 16 weeks to hear back from them. So that's a process in itself. And then when you hear back, I mean, you can start basically whenever, but the year is basically the day you start. So it's not a calendar year. Uh, and my year was from July 5th of 2022 to July 5th of 2023. And my average day, I would go to the movies and I had to take pictures to show that the movie was playing. I would take a picture in front of the kiosk, in front of the showtimes. But you could see some of the video I started doing on TikTok as a suggestion, as what they call supplemental evidence. Um, and I would take a picture in front of the showtimes to show that the movie was playing. I had to have a manager signed a logbook for every single movie. I had to write down the showtime, the theater that it was showing at. I had to write down the showtime, and the manager would have to sign it, and then that had to be notarized. And then I would go to the movie, and during the movie, the theater employees would basically the ushers. They would show up at very spontaneous moments throughout the movie. I would not know when they would show up. And this is something I worked out with the
Oh.
theater ahead of time. So I worked this out with the theater ahead of time, and they were very supportive. And they would make sure I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And then at the end of the movie, two of the ushers that would check in on me throughout the movie, they would sign the witness signature book, which I had a separate logbook for that. They would sign the witness signature page, and that was also notarized. So that was part of the process in itself. And then I had to keep
I was
the
gonna say,
ticket stubs of, and then I
no,
had
go
to
ahead,
keep the
go ahead.
ticket stubs. Then I had to keep the ticket stubs as well. So
Do you still have them all?
I do actually. I actually have them to the side. This is what 777 ticket stubs look like. Is they're the paper thin?
That's amazing.
It's the paper thin ones. So yeah.
So how obviously it helps that you, and I know you broke the record at a Regal, and obviously it helps that you like built a relationship with the people at your local Regal, so they could help and they could come, like the ushers, they were there, everyone was in on it. Did you see all 777 movies at the same location?
No, there were a few different Regals that I went to, and then I went to one AMC. The AMC I went to, I actually used to work at.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and I only went to the AMC if, for whatever reason, my Regal was closed or they weren't playing something I really wanted to see. Um, so that was the only reason.
I was gonna say, let's dive into the logistics of it all because naturally everyone is interested. Movie that you saw the most?
I saw Puss in Boots: The Last Wish 47 times.
Hey, at least it was a good one. At least I really like that one.
It was, and I get asked a lot why that one, and it was particularly because there were more show times, and it was very
Hmm.
easy to fit into my schedule.
I was gonna say I read something. I'm forgetting what paper it was now that did a piece on you that part of the reason was maybe, and maybe this is why there was more show times. It's a little bit of a shorter movie. So did you try and knowing that you were gonna have to do a lot of repeat performances or repeat viewings? Did you try and target shorter films where you could?
I try to shoot for movies that are less than 2 hours if possible. Um, I didn't have to watch trailers, but I had to watch the movie from the beginning to the end of credits. So
Hmm.
and with Puss in Boots, it was like an hour and 45 minutes, which was one of the shorter movies. And my second most watched movie was Super Mario Brothers, and that was an hour and a half. And I watched
Hmm.
that 35 times. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Let's say going into that, another question we got from TikTok from Draco Mays. How many of the 777 did you find bad? And in addition to that, how did you endure so many bad movies?
There are a few bad movies, um, but I'm very stubborn when it comes to just movies in general. So if I start a movie, I always finish it, even if I don't
Mm.
like it. And that during my record attempt, I watched the worst movie I have ever seen, and I endured through the whole thing, even when the whole theater left. Uh, so
What movie?
that's it was called The Devil Conspiracy, and
Okay.
I will not I would not wish my I would not wish that on my worst enemy. I would I would not.
And how
Yeah.
many times did you have to see it?
I only
Or
watched
did
it
you
once.
say, "Oh, you couldn't do that one again"?
No, there are certain movies I would not watch again because they were not good. I was very strategic on which movies I watched more than once. So yeah, like if they
Well,
were
what was it
bad, I wouldn't watch it again. So
what was it like for you when you first broke the record? There was quite a bit of buzz around you. Like I originally saw, I don't know if it was discussing film, but there was one of the major film accounts tweeted about it. Of course, Regal made a really big deal about it because you broke record and saw the majority of the movies there. Guinness, of course, talked about like what was that like? Where all of a sudden, you're just this guy who's going to the movies all the time, and now there's like quite a bit of publicity around you. What was that like for you?
there was a lot of publicity on the internet, but when I was out in public, nobody knew who I was. So I was just a guy living his normal life. So it didn't really bother. It didn't really affect me much, other than on the internet. So I was just going to living my life. I work a full time job, so even people at work didn't even know what I was doing. They were like, "Oh, hey, he was in the news. We didn't even know what you were doing. Like, congrats. This is is this what you were doing after work this whole time?" I'm like, "Yeah, yes." So
How, how often were you? I mean, most of us, even if we go to the movies a lot, have to get some kind of snack, but like you can't be eating that much. How often were you getting snacks at the movies?
So the one rule when breaking the record was I wasn't allowed to eat or drink while watching the movie. So it was considered multitasking. Um, so anything that was considered a multitask while watching the movie that included like eating, drinking, talking during the movie, sleeping, having your phone out, couldn't do it. So I had to solely focus on the movie. Uh, and
This was a
that's
rule
where
you put in place for yourself, or like Guinness told you this?
Guinness put it in place.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they don't explicitly state, "Hey, you can't eat or drink," but the way the rules are written is like regardless. It's like regardless of any activity, so you can't do anything besides watch the movie.
So you must have like what are some like tips and tricks of like you must have mastered like best seats in the theater, best time to go to the theater, best day of the week. Like what are some tips and tricks of going to the movies? Because you are more experienced now than anyone.
I, I've always, for me, I've always sat in the third or fourth row in the middle of the row. And that's because I always found that not a lot of people sit like in the first two rows,
Mhm.
three rows of the theater. And that limits the distractions in front of you. Like you don't chances are you don't have people with their phones out or anything. But like you can have people talk behind you, but it still limits your distractions. Um I like to go on a Thursday evening. That's just me because it's movie premiere night
Mm.
usually. Um, but Monday nights aren't that like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays are usually dead. So if people want to avoid like a busy night, that's usually the nights to go. Um, and as for like yeah, and that's usually really what I can all I
No,
can
those are
really
good.
say on it. Yeah.
Pivoting a little bit, I know you did this not just for the sake of breaking a record, but I know you did this for a really good cause to bring some more awareness to mental health. I know when you broke the record and going in line with seeing 777 movies, that Regal donated $7,777.77 to the American Federation for Suicide Prevention. What made you pick this cause and want to bring some more awareness around such a worthy cause?
I'm very open about my struggles with mental health growing up, and I think there's like a stigma around mental health, and I think
Mhm.
people need to be more. They don't need to be more open about their personal struggles, but I think there's need to be more talk about getting treatment for mental health, stuff like that. So um, I've wanted to raise awareness for it, and so I about like 2 3 weeks into my record attempt, uh, it just came to me that just to raise awareness for it, because I've always used movies as like an escape,
Mhm.
uh, to deal with depression and anxiety, growing up, even like growing up in school, going back in high school, middle school. So uh, that's really what came about.
No, I think that's wonderful, and you're not alone in that. I think, present company included, movies are, the purest, best, and for most of us, the most accessible form of escapism. And you're absolutely right. People can share or not share their own personal struggle, but we should be talking more about, what eats at us, anxieties and depression, whatever else might come with that. I've had my own struggles and ups and downs, with that sort of stuff, and movies in that way, are always there for you. So I appreciate personally what you've done. And what did it mean to you when, because I know it was a surprise when, Regal said they were going to donate round up almost 8 grand, to this cause that you had worked so hard to build awareness of? What was that like for you to know that you had done that?
It meant a lot. Um, I At that point I didn't raise much. Uh, I was raising money on my own. Um, I only raised like maybe $2 3,000 at that point, which isn't to scoff at. But
No, not at all.
When Regal came about, that was a huge surprise. I didn't expect them, because I reached out to them for assistance throughout the record attempt, and they're like, we'll get back to you. We'll get back to you." And then when the record attempt, when I finished and everything was certified, they surprised me with that, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, um, thank you." So that was that was that meant a lot. So, and they even got the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention involved. So they got ambassadors to show up when they gave the donation. So uh,
It
that
makes
even meant
me
a
think
lot.
a lot about, oh, I'm sorry.
No, no, you're good.
It makes me think, I know I read somewhere that your favorite movie of that year was Spider-Verse, and it does make me think, if I can compliment you like this for a moment, I forget if it's in the Tobey Maguire trilogy, the second or the third, when he has the moment with Stan Lee and he says, well, I guess one guy can really make a difference. You are one guy who has made a tremendous difference, and I do hope you take some pride in like in all that in all that you've done, because that's really amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And before I forget about it, I'm going to leave the link in the bio. So if people want to donate, if people need help or want to look into it, they have a friend or a family member who might be struggling, I'm going to leave the link to that in the bio for the American Federation for Suicide Prevention. It's afsp.org. But again, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll leave the link to that in the bio. So if you want to look into it, please do. Even if you're not someone who is currently struggling or has struggled, it cannot hurt to look. If you have the means, donate. Anything along those lines, please do. let's transition a little bit back to what your favorite film of that year was, which was Across the Spider-Verse. You posted a video on your TikTok of Phil Lord and Chris Miller shouting you out. Did you know that was coming? What was that like, sitting in the theater and being like, hey, wait, they're talking about me, a guy who's about to break the record?
You mentioned that. So before every movie, I know when exactly to use the bathroom because I don't have to watch the trailers. So
You know what's coming.
So I know what's coming, like, right, because they have that Regal intro. Regal has like their movie quotes intro, which I don't think is no longer a thing. And so my friend Jerry, I had like family and friends to celebrate me breaking the record there, and Regal brought out a camera crew, and I was about to leave the theater to do my last minute bathroom break before the movie, and they're like, just wait, don't leave the theater just yet. I'm like, what's going on? And they surprised me with the Phil Lord and Chris Miller shout out. I'm like, wow. So I did not expect that at all. It was pretty cool. I I wish I tried to get a a clean copy of it, but due to copyright, unfortunately, couldn't get one. But I was lucky enough. My mom, they told my mom ahead of time what was going to happen, and she had her phone out and started recording. So otherwise, I may not have actually had that to share. So I'm grateful for them to telling my mom that. So
I mean, that's an amazing experience. You're one of, I'm sure, that might one of a very few people, if any, have gotten an experience like that. So that's amazing. So you broke the record that day. It had been 7:15. You're at 7:16. Like, if I broke the record for amount of hot dogs eating, I would stop at 1+. Like, what made you then see another 61 movies in the calendar, or not calendar, but in your calendar, your 365-day period? Because you saw 61 more. What made you want to keep going and get to a 777 and not just break but smash the record?
I was actually trying to shoot for 800, but I had COVID twice during my record attempts. So nature was against me. Like, yeah, nature was against me, you know? And I was afraid I may not have actually even going to break the record at one point. But I did like this really giant push in like February. And I watched close to 100 movies in 1 month. It was brutal. And I don't know. Somebody suggested, like, well, you're not going to hit 800. It would be really cool to stop at 777. It was one of my TikTok followers. I was like, okay, it's better than just stopping at some random number. So I'll do it. I'll stop at 777. So that's what I did. I thought it would be a memorable number, and I was at a suggestion of one of my TikTok followers who goes by Smiley. So if he's watching this, shout out to him. So,
and obviously it was a memorable number. We're still here talking about it. Let's circle back. You had COVID twice during this. So how did you, like, what's the most movies you saw, let's say, in a single day? Because if you're out of commission for 10 days to 2 weeks, whatever it might have been, how did you make up for that lost time?
I had quite a bit of vacation time with work, so I ended up taking 2 weeks off of work in May. And May was the month I watched 100 movies, and right the month before I did my final push before I broke the record, and leading up to Spider-Verse. But I watched 6 movies in one day, and I watched Fast X 6 times in one day, which I immediately regretted. I mean, look, I like the Fast and Furious franchise, which is fun, but I could not sit through that movie 6 times ever again. But that's what I did, and I did 100 movie push in May, and I shot for movies less than 2 hours during that month. I prioritized quite a bit. I made some sacrifices uh, for. I canceled some plans, which people understood. So, yeah.
When the year ended, did you when you got to 777 and you get the record and Regal makes a big deal about it? Did you then take a month off from going to the movies, or were you back there next week for whatever it is you might have actually wanted to see?
I was there the next week. I've been keeping up to date with the movie releases. I even did Barbenheimer in July.
Love it.
The closest 70 millimeter IMAX was in Philadelphia, which is 2.5 hours away from me. I drove 2.5 hours just to do Barbenheimer in 70 millimeter for Oppenheimer. So, which I thought was totally worth it.
I think so. I think that's a special kind of dedication, as you show that you have. But I think that's absolutely worth it. Zachariah, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I appreciate you taking all this time with me this morning. First of all, where you mentioned TikTok, plug, where can people follow you if they want to see? I was just watching a bunch of your reviews before I came on here. Where can people find you on TikTok and anywhere else that you might want to plug?
I'm at That Nerd Zach, all one word. So That Nerd Zach. Zach is spelled Zach. So that's where you can find me. It's also the same as my Instagram handle. So if you want to find me on Instagram as well.
Perfect. Well, Zachariah, I appreciate you taking so much time with me today. It was so awesome getting to talk to you, getting to know you. And again, not to get too sappy, but as somebody who has gone through my own mental health struggles and depression and some of that stuff, the idea that you didn't just do this for a love of movies, you did this for a good cause. And, there's $8,000 in the pocket of the, American Federation for Suicide Prevention, which I'm sure went to help a lot of people, which is just really incredible. So again, you should be really proud of yourself. And I know, I'm grateful, for people like you who have dedicated their passion to to a really good cause. So tip of the cap. And I know I'm not the only one who's grateful.
I just want to say one last thing. For those that are struggling
Please.
out there, you're definitely not alone. So, just so if you're struggling out there, just know you're not alone. So,
you are definitely not alone. This has been another episode of the That Movie Is Ours Now podcast with the amazing Guinness World Record holder and, more importantly, a great all-around dude, Zachariah Swope. Zachariah, thanks so much for taking a few minutes today. Appreciate this. We'll have to catch up again soon.
Thank you for having me.